Welcome back to Ask the Expert. I'm your host, Zach Hunsinger, and we are joined by my esteemed and most learned colleague, Mr. Mark McCombs from Safer Foundation. Today, we will be delving into the topic of a new education bill that is transforming parole. So, Mark, when did this bill come into effect? What is it, and what is it all about?
Well, this is a wonder thing. First of all, Zach, thank you for having me here. This is a wonderful piece of legislation. So many times we see legislation pass that may or may not have an impact on our community, may or may not have an impact any place. This is a bill. This is a piece of legislation that is absolutely going to impact the returning resident community. It was passed um, in the spring session of the General Assembly last year. Last spring, came into effect on January 1st of this year. It started as Senate Bill 423 and became Public Act 103-271. It was sponsored by fairly senior leadership in both chambers. The Senate President Pro Tem Bill Cunningham, and the House, it was the House Speaker Pro Tem Jahan Gordon Broof, and it was an initiative of the Reform Alliance. Um, it's Meek Mill's group, nationwide group. This is their first foray into Illinois politics, and we were lucky enough to have them give us a call and to be able to work with them to get this passed to, as you said, really dynamically change the way parole is done in Illinois to bring some very much needed definition to what's happening in what had been a very vague and arbitrary system, and to bring some transparency to that whole system. People think that that parole is sort of like what you see on Shawshank Redemption. Somebody goes up into the parole board and makes their case, gives an interview. That is not what it is like at all in Illinois. The Prisoner Review Board that hears parole cases, and in Illinois we call parole MSR, or mandatory supervised release. They see almost no one. They go by files and what scant reports that they can get, and as a result of that, between that and the vagaries of some really outdated law in Illinois, the parole system had become very arbitrary, where one person would have certain requirements, another person would have other requirements, and in often cases the requirements made no sense at all, had no relationship with reality whatsoever, to the point where I've been told that there was a feeling that everybody had to get something, and at some point maybe they just checked a box, and so you got.
If I can jump
Yep.
in real quick, I just want to make sure I'm tracking because I can get lost real quick. Which is, well, if you don't mind, tell me again what is the bill's name, and then are you saying that previously, before the bill, there was a lot of discretion allowed to the boards in mandating the requirements of their parole?
the exactly, the bill didn't really have a name at all, it- as is the case in a lot of these bills. But there was tremendous discretion given to the board as to who got what. And I'll give you, for instance, you and I both know that I've been impacted by incarceration. I spent 3 years in prison. I I was a nice kid from the suburbs who never did drugs. Never. I'm the only guy I know. I always tell this story laughingly, almost ashamedly. I'm the only guy I know over 17 and under 80 who never smoked pot. And I come out of prison with a parole mandate telling me I have to do 200 hours of substance abuse counseling. And when I raised that with some folks at the Prison Review Board, they said, "Well, yeah, at that time we figured everybody had to get something, and that's what you got." So there was, for me, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But imagine that guy who gets out, or woman who gets out, and suddenly, they have no resources, and they've got to find the money because these trainings aren't always done for
So
free.
so you have to pay for the treatment that they order you to take. So you had to pay for your 200 hours of substance use treatment is what you're saying.
Well, I was lucky enough to get mine from Safer for free. But if you're going
Oh,
down,
wow.
but if you're going downstate and you don't have a Safer
There's nothing.
or a
Yeah.
community-based organization, you're paying for
Wow.
that, and it's not
I don't
cheap.
think people know that. I think you kind of I think your Shawshank Redemption comment even misses the mark. I think most people assume you go talk to some guy behind a desk, they put an ankle monitor on you, and then if you are ordered to go to any services, it's free or paid for by the state, I guess, and that's that. And what you're telling me is
It's not the
that's
case.
not close to being the case.
That's not the case at all. And what this bill did was require, amongst a number of different things that it did, you alluded to the educational portion of it, but one of the things it did is said that um, there's got to be reasonable belief uh, in documentation and evidence to support each one of the parole mandates, that the conditions have to be based upon a risk and a needs assessment. They have to be based on the history of the individual, both while they were incarcerated and before they were incarcerated. And they can only involve those deprivations of liberty that are reasonably necessary to protect the public from the individual recommitting the crime that they were convicted for, as opposed to before just wide out discretion as to what they could do. Now they're going to have to document their
What's
reasons for
the
being able to do
what's
it.
the risk and needs assessment they're using? I'm actually a little concerned to hear those words come up. So tell me more about why that was included and what the assessment is and why it's so important.
That was part of a compromise with IDOC and their parole people, is to come up with a definitive standard uh, to be able to do this, as to what is the risk that the individual is going to recidivate, uh, and what are their needs going to be when they get out, and to do it in a standardized fashion, which is again not something that IDOC was doing in the past.
It sounds like a step in the right direction, I suppose. But I've read so many studies discussing the biasness associated with those risk assessments that makes us a little more predisposed to assume one may be I even hate the word danger or concern to the public. I think those can kind of miss the mark a little bit. But
And I
regarding
think that may be, and again, this is going to be one of these things where we're going to have to see how it plays out. And if it is not playing out the way we want it to, we're going to be back before the legislature and seeking another change.
Very good. Well, what about the needs part? Is the needs assessment based off of the needs required to keep the person from recidivating, or is this the needs of this person's going reintegrating into society with zero support? There's no housing. It doesn't even have a primary care physician. Like, what's the needs assessment
All
going
of the
to look
above.
for? Okay,
All of the above, both recidivating as well as their needs in the community as a whole, and taking into account uh, things like family obligations, financial obligations, educational obligations and opportunities, employment. Uh, all of that is taken into account in the needs assessment.
and you already alluded to Safer helping you, but I assume Safer is also one of the organizations that will be assisting meet those needs if folks are willing to come visit us.
Exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
So what's this education piece? We've
The
touched on it a little
education,
bit, but what's
the,
so wild and new
you
about
know,
it?
the wonderful thing about the bill is the education piece is sort of uh, the smallest part of the bill, but it's eaten up all of the PR on this. For my money, the transparency and the definition that's being imposed upon the prisoner review board is the part that's important for me. Maybe it's because of
I was gonna say
my
it's because
own
you're biased.
bias. It's my,
Exactly.
well,
Yeah, that's why.
suddenly you get this mandate. You've never seen these people. They don't know who they couldn't pick me out of a lineup, and they're telling me what I got to do based upon nothing. So I think that's going to change things. But the other wonderful thing is that it's taken away the prisoner review board's discretion to provide 90 days off of mandatory supervised release if an individual has obtained an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or a vocational certificate while they were in prison or after they got out of prison. Before, it was discretionary on the part of the prison review board. And again, depending on who at the prison review board may have been reviewing your case, could have been different. Their idea of when to exercise that discretion could have been different from the person sitting 3 seats down from them. Now it makes it mandatory that if you get one of those degrees or certificates, you're going to get 90 days knocked off of your MSR.
Is there any average MSR? Does it just vary so much? I mean,
It it
90
it's
days does not sound like a lot to me, to be honest.
well, try doing some MSR and then tell me about it.
I know. I realize that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm going to sound terrible, but I mean, 90 days. Is that off of 5 years? Is it 90 days off of 120 days? I mean, then talking 75% versus
It
1%. I mean, that's a huge difference.
it's gonna differ depending on the individual's case and how much good time they got in the beginning. Your MSR is going to be, um, you know, whatever you had left on your sentence, um, that you've got to fulfill. You're still considered within the custody of the Illinois Department of Corrections. You're just not doing that time inside a prison. So generally, you're seeing MSR around. I mean, the standard is 3 years. No one usually does the entire 3 years. Generally, there are a number of different programs or different ways that the Prison Review Board will cut that down. If you do time in um, one of the adult transition centers, the two, of course, that Safer operates at Crossroads at North Lawndale, but then there's also the adult transition center that IDOC runs in Peoria, and there's the women's facility in Fox Valley. You are immediately um, eligible to have your MSR terminated after 90 days. So there's all kinds of different ways for this to be knocked down, and to get an additional 90 is when you're sitting there looking at it, and you've been calling this parole officer for permission to do everything for the last X amount of time. Trust me, the 90 days
I'm
is
sure it
welcome
is
enough.
sweet. But so I wasn't aware of this. You started to describe kind of like patching together various types of incentives where you
Right.
could reduce your MSR to 50%
No
almost.
one I know has done the entire MSR.
Wow.
Everybody has gotten done early. And again, that's another nice feature of this bill.
Uh-huh.
The bill has a provision in it that says that if you've applied for one of these early release from MSR programs and you are turned down, two things have to happen. One is every 6 months, your parole officer has to review where you are in terms of your progress towards early release. If you are turned down, the Prison Review Board is now required to provide you with specific steps that you have to take so that when you reapply, you'll be approved.
So this sounds like, I mean, that sounds great to know specific. I mean, I can think of any time I've gotten non-descriptive responses to what feel like robot inquiries, and you're like, well, I don't know what that means. I'm sure that's very helpful to a lot of people. Now, my question is on the sort of other side of the table, if you will. How's the board feel about it? I mean, it sounds like this bill is giving them more work, which I think people tend to dislike. in some ways. I mean, was it met with a lot of opposition, or how? What's this feeling from the other side of the table?
Well, certainly, there was pushback on it. There always is when you're trying something like this, and for the exact reasons you say, and also because it's something that's new and different, and nobody ever likes that. However, I think the governor made a real effort um, during the last round of appointments to the board to put people into place whose mindset would be would be parallel to this. The people who progressive thinking folks, folks from the academic community, and so I think that that has mitigated. Certainly, the folks who have been on there for a while. I don't think, although there hasn't been a whole lot said, but I don't get the impression that they're completely thrilled with this. But I think that the new appointees have mitigated um,
Hmm.
a lot of the pushback that you'd get from this.
Interesting. Well, speaking of the other individuals, I mean, other ways that you think this would impact folks. Did you go over them all, or are there other
Well, I think
ideas?
the biggest thing that it's going to impact folks is twofold. Um, One is I think it's going to cut down on VOPs, on violation of parole. If folks know that there's a transparent system there, and that they have to be given reasons for things, and that they're not going to have mandates that don't make sense for them, or hopefully less of that, there's less of a chance that they're going to violate parole and recidivate. So hopefully we're going to see a little bit of a drop in that recidivism rate. Um, but I think just as important is going to be um, the loss of that sense of frustration that a lot of us had when we were coming out, of having something imposed on us that we had no opportunity to talk about, made no sense, was not based upon anything. Um, it's going to give people a little bit of a leg up emotionally and psychologically, um, to be able to make that transition. And that transition's hard. I always say, is prison, as difficult as it is not nearly as hard as reentry. Because prison, you wake up every morning, they tell you what to do, what you're going to wear, where you're going to go, where you're going to eat, et cetera, et cetera. You get out, suddenly you got to find a job, you got to find a housing, you got to reestablish relationships with your community, with your family, et cetera. And you're doing all of that with a, a, a criminal conviction
Hmm.
in your background. To the extent you can make it a little more psychologically easier for that person, because they don't have to go through substance abuse training, because there was nothing to find, that there was nothing to base that on, or they do have to do it, but they don't have to do something else. You've got a better chance of that person succeeding in the long run, I think.
Well, I love that your response. There's two types of impacts here. You got the practical reduction of VOPs and therefore recidivism. So there's a macro, micro, practical response, and then the psychological, individual impact as well of the reduction of frustration. I am without a doubt, I'm confident that's exactly how it'll play out. And removing one thing can be huge. I mean, I mean, I get overwhelmed in my own life, and to remove one of the item off my to-do list is suddenly removes like all of that pressure, and so I'm sure that will be helpful. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience that you may have overlooked?
No, I think that's it. I think that we were very proud to be able to help on this. I I think we were very lucky to see senior leadership in both houses take this bill up and take it seriously, and actually push it and run with it. It gives me a lot of hope for being able to do other things like this in the future. So we're looking for this to be the forerunner of good things to come.
All right, I love it. And any teasers for Thursday for the conference?
Oh, teasers for Thursday for the conference.
Just come and learn. And if you thought, here, I'll do it for you. If you thought Mark was amazing, not to discredit his ability to be articulate, but the guest lineup of speakers on this type of topic is going to blow you away. So you definitely should come check it out. If you
I,
thought 20 minutes right now was enlightening, you're in for a real treat on Thursday. So hopefully
well,
you'll.
and let me, as great as the speakers are, the thing, I'm biased because so many of them are our colleagues from
Yeah.
Safer.
Yes.
Um, but the one that I'm looking forward to is our friend Ben Riddell from ACLU, who is going to pull back the curtain and talk about how the sausage gets made, how good laws are made, and how collaborative the process is, and things like that. And to hear that, usually we're talking to Ben about policy issues and about substance. We almost never talk about process from the 30,000 foot level. If anybody knows the secrets of that, it's going to be Ben. And so I'm really looking forward to that portion of the conference.
And
It's
you'll
going to be in the afternoon, so folks got to stay awake for it.
the afternoon is the easiest part for me. That's when my day slows down. It's in the morning that I'm always slammed. So will you physically be there?
Yeah, I'm the MC. I'm the master of
Oh,
ceremonies
no,
for the
duh.
whole
Yeah,
thing.
I knew that.
Um,
Of course you'll be, but the audience didn't know it. That's why I
But they
asked.
didn't know that. I was going to say the best part of the conference will be the really handsome guy who's emceeing the whole thing.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I hope our audience does come and come up and say hi, shake our hands. We'll look forward to meeting you. And
Please do. Malcolm X College on Thursday, starting at 9:30. The Illinois Department of Finance and Professional Regulation Secretary Tredo is the keynote speaker. He's been on the forefront of so many things having to do with reducing the barriers to licensing of individuals who have been justice involved, and so I think that his remarks will be extremely enlightening. And then we've got two really great panels um, to talk about building bridges, and of course, uh, something that people don't consider a lot, but justice involved veterans, which I know is near dear to your heart. Um, uh, so I think it's going to be a good day. I think it's going to be a really good day. I think it's gonna fly by very quickly.
yes, without a doubt. Well, thank you, Mark. And as we wrap up this fun discussion on the breaking parole bill, I was going to say education bill, but you've educated me that that's just the one piece of it. So I want to express my sincere gratitude to our esteemed guest, Mr. Mark McCombs, for sharing his invaluable insights and expertise. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and continue making a positive impact in your corner of the world. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.